year is 2089, and the world above is a desolate wasteland, a graveyard of civilizations past. The air is thick with radiation, and the sun is a distant memory, obscured by a perpetual shroud of ash and dust. Below the surface, in the depths of Refugium 11 we live, 68 souls clinging to the remnants of humanity. The bunker is our sanctuary, our prison, our tomb. It is a labyrinth of cold, steel corridors, dimly lit by flickering fluorescent lights that hum with a faint, almost imperceptible buzz. The air is stale, recycled through ancient filtration systems that groan under the weight of their endless task. The walls are lined with pipes, their surfaces slick with condensation, and the floors are a patchwork of metal grates and concrete, worn smooth by the passage of countless footsteps. We have been here for 13 years. 13 years of rationed meals, of whispered conversations, of stifled dreams. The bunker is a place of silence, where the weight of our collective despair hangs heavy in the air. We are a community bound by necessity, but fractured by fear. Trust is a luxury we cannot afford. My name is Clive, and I share a cramped Spartan room with Kirk. He is a man of few words, with a calm demeanour that belies the tension that simmers beneath the surface of our existence. Kirk is unassuming, almost invisible in the way he moves through the bunker, never drawing attention to himself. He is a man who blends into the background, a shadow among shadows. We have lived together for years, and yet I feel as though I hardly know him. The murder of Zala shattered the fragile peace of Refugium 11. She was found in the medical bay, her lifeless body slumped over the cold, sterile table. Her throat had been slit, the blood pooling beneath her, a dark crimson stain that seemed to seep into the very fabric of the bunker. The shock of her death reverberated through the corridors, a ripple of fear and suspicion that spread like a virus. The investigation was swift, and the evidence pointed to Lucia. She and Zala had been at odds for months, their arguments echoing through the bunker like the clash of steel. Lucia was volatile, her temper flaring at the slightest provocation, and it was no secret that she harbored a deep-seated hatred for Zala. When the guards searched her quarters, they found her diaries, filled with venomous rants and chilling declarations. Zala must die, she had written, over and over again, the words scrawled in a frantic, almost manic hand. Lucia was arrested, her protests falling on deaf ears. She was placed in isolation, her fate sealed. The council decreed that she would be executed, a grim reminder of the consequences of our actions in this confined, claustrophobic world. But even as the bunker prepared for her death, a gnawing doubt began to take root in my mind. Something about the case felt off, like a puzzle with a missing piece. Kirk, as always, remained calm and composed. He offered his condolences to Zala's family, his voice steady, his expression unreadable. He was a rock in the storm, a pillar of stability in a world that seemed to be crumbling around us. But as the days passed, I began to notice subtle changes in his behaviour. He would sometimes stare off into the distance, his eyes clouded with thoughts he refused to share. He became more withdrawn, more distant, as if a part of him had retreated into some hidden corner of his mind. Then, one night, everything changed. I was lying in my bunk, the faint hum of the bunker's systems lulling me into a restless sleep. The air was thick, oppressive, and I could feel the weight of the bunker pressing down on me, a constant reminder of our entombment. I was on the verge of drifting off when I heard it, a low, guttural murmur, barely audible over the hum of the lights. At first I thought it was just the bunker, the sound of the pipes or the ventilation system. But as I listened, the murmur grew louder, more distinct. It was Kirk. He was talking in his sleep, his voice a harsh whisper that sent a chill down my spine.
Had to do it. She killed my child. My child.
I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. The words were fragmented, disjointed, but their meaning was clear. Kirk was talking about Zala, about her death, about the child she had aborted. I lay there, paralyzed by fear and disbelief. Kirk, my roommate, the man I had lived with for years, was the murderer. The realization hit me like a sledgehammer. shattering the fragile illusion of safety I had clung to. I wanted to believe it was a dream, a nightmare born of the stress and paranoia that permeated the bunker, but deep down, I knew the truth. I had to act quickly. Lucia's execution was scheduled for the next day, and if I didn't do something, an innocent woman would die. I slipped out of my bunk, my movements slow and deliberate, careful not to wake Kirk. The bunker was eerily silent, the only sound the faint hum of the lights and the distant drip of water from the pipes. I made my way to the control room, my mind racing with plans and contingencies. The control room was the heart of the bunker, a cramped space filled with monitors and control panels that regulated everything from the air supply to the security systems. I knew that if I could access the surveillance footage, I could prove Kirk's guilt. But as I reached for the console, a voice behind me stopped me cold.
Clive.
I turned, my heart in my throat. Kirk stood in the doorway, his expression calm, almost serene. But there was something in his eyes, a cold, calculating gleam that sent a shiver down my spine.
What are you doing here?
He asked, his voice steady, almost conversational. I couldn't sleep, I stammered, my mind racing. I thought I heard something. Kirk stepped into the room, his movements slow and deliberate.
You shouldn't be here, Clive. This area is restricted.
I know, I was worried. Kirk's eyes narrowed, and for a moment I thought he was going to call me out, to accuse me of what I had overheard. But then he smiled, a cold, mirthless smile that didn't reach his eyes.
Go back to bed, Clive,
he said, his voice soft, almost soothing.
You need your rest.
I nodded, my throat dry, and turned to leave. But as I reached the door, Kirk's voice stopped me again.
Clive.
I turned, my heart pounding. Yes?
Don't make the same mistake Zala did,
he said, his voice low and menacing.
Some secrets are better left buried.
I nodded again, my mind reeling, and hurried back to our room. I knew then that I was in danger, that Kirk would stop at nothing to protect his secret. But I also knew that I couldn't let Lucia die for a crime she didn't commit. The next day, the bunker was abuzz with activity as the preparations for Lucia's execution began. The air was thick with tension, the weight of what was to come pressing down on us all. I watched from the shadows as Kirk moved through the crowd, his calm demeanour a stark contrast to the fear and anxiety that gripped the rest of us. As the time for the execution drew near, I made my move. I slipped into the control room, my hands trembling as I accessed the surveillance footage. I fast-forwarded through the days leading up to Zala's murder, my heart pounding as I searched for the evidence I needed. And then I saw it. Kirk, entering the medical bay in the dead of night. He moved with purpose, his face a mask of determination. I watched as he approached Zala, his hand slipping into his pocket and pulling out a knife. The footage was grainy, but there was no mistaking what happened next. I had the evidence I needed, but as I turned to leave, I found Kirk standing in the doorway, his expression dark and menacing.
I warned you, Clive,
he said, his voice low and dangerous.
Some secrets are better left buried.
He lunged at me, his movements swift and precise. I barely had time to react, dodging his first strike and scrambling to defend myself. The control room was a blur of motion, the two of us locked in a desperate struggle for survival. Kirk was strong, his movements fueled by a cold, calculated rage, but I fought back with everything I had, driven by the knowledge that I was fighting, not just for my life, but for the truth. In the end, it was a single, desperate move that saved me. As Kirk lunged at me again, I sidestepped and grabbed a heavy wrench from the console. With a swift, brutal motion, I brought it down on his head, the impact sending him sprawling to the floor. He lay there unmoving, his eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. I stood over him, my chest heaving, my hands trembling with adrenaline and fear. It was over. The evidence I had gathered was enough to exonerate Lucia and expose Kirk's guilt. The bunker was thrown into chaos as the truth came to light, the fragile peace shattered once again. But as I stood there, surrounded by the cold steel walls of Refugium 11, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The shadows of the bunker were deep, and there were secrets buried within its walls that we had yet to uncover. The lights flickered overhead. I couldn't help but wonder what other horrors lay hidden in the darkness.